My brother forced our elderly dad into a nursing home to take his house. A week later, he found out the house had been sold. Years ago, to me. My brother thought he was being clever when he forced our elderly father into a nursing home, just so he could take over Dad's house and claim it as his own. He packed him up, changed the locks, and bragged about finally getting what he deserved. But a week later, when he went to transfer the deed, he found out the house had already been sold years ago, to me. Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Growing up, my brother Mark and I had very different relationships with our dad. I was the quiet one, the so-called good kid who stayed close to home, helped with chores, and eventually took on more responsibility when our mom passed. Mark? He was the golden child when we were little, but as soon as he hit adulthood, he dipped, barely called, barely visited, only showed up for birthdays or when he needed something. So, when our dad started slowing down, forgetting things, needing help around the house, it was me who stepped in. Grocery runs, doctor appointments, making sure the bills were paid. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I loved him, because I knew how much that house meant to him and to us. It wasn't just a house, it was home. A two-story craftsman he'd built with his own hands in the 80s. Every scratch on the banister, every squeaky step in the hallway, it all had meaning. About 5 years ago, Dad sat me down at the kitchen table and said something I didn't expect. "I want you to have the house," he told me. "You've taken care of me, and this place deserves someone who understands what it's worth, not just in money, but in memory." He didn't want to wait until the will. He wanted it done now, while he was still of sound mind. So, we went through the legal process. We signed papers, recorded the deed, everything above board. But here's the thing. We never told Mark. Dad didn't want to deal with the drama, and honestly, neither did I. We both knew Mark would either try to take control or flip out. So, we agreed to keep it quiet. I still paid rent, helped with upkeep, but legally, the house was mine. Fast forward to just a few weeks ago. Mark suddenly decided to get involved, said Dad needed professional care, and that it wasn't safe for him to be alone anymore. The truth, he wanted the house. And he was about to do something that would blow up in his face harder than he ever saw coming. It all happened faster than I could process. One day I was helping Dad water the front lawn like usual, and the next, Mark was barging in with a social worker and a folder full of printed paperwork. He claimed Dad had been wandering the neighborhood, forgetting to eat, and leaving the stove on. Sure, Dad had his off days. He was pushing 82, but I was with him nearly every day. He wasn't helpless, and he definitely wasn't in danger. But Mark came in swinging. He started throwing around phrases like elder care, mental competency, and placement options. I kept asking him to slow down, but he wouldn't even look me in the eye. He'd already made up his mind. Scratch that, he'd made up a plan. Within 48 hours, he had Dad moved into a nursing facility across town. One of those cookie-cutter places with pastel walls and piped-in soft jazz. And the second he dropped off our father, he changed the locks. I came home from work to find my key no longer worked. Mark was inside, wearing smug-like cologne. He opened the door just enough to smile and say, "Dad's where he belongs now. This place needs someone who will actually use it." I wanted to swing on him. Instead, I took a breath and said nothing. Because I knew something he didn't. He thought he'd played the game, that he'd strong-armed our dad out of the way, seized the property, and claimed his prize. But what he didn't know, what he never thought to check, was that the deed had my name on it. The house wasn't his to take. It hadn't been for years. And the look on his face when he found out was going to be worth every single second of waiting. 3 days after locking me out, Mark strutted into the county clerk's office like he owned the place, literally. A mutual friend who works there texted me almost immediately. "Hey, your brother's here trying to transfer the deed to your dad's house. Should I tell him, or do you want to?" I nearly choked on my coffee. Mark had no idea the property was no longer in Dad's name. No clue the legal documents had been filed 5 years ago. No concept of what was about to hit him. I didn't reply to the text. I just waited. About an hour later, my phone rang. "Why the hell is your name on Dad's deed?" Mark snapped, skipping the pleasantries entirely. I smiled. "Because I own the house." "You can't own the house," he barked. "Dad never said anything. You're lying." "Oh, but I can, and I do," I said calmly. "Signed, notarized, and recorded 5 years ago. I pay the taxes, I maintain the property. You might want to talk to a real estate attorney before you dig yourself any deeper. Silence. Then, so this is your way of screwing me over? You went behind everyone's back? I almost laughed. You forced our dad into a nursing home to take a house you thought was still his. You didn't ask. You didn't talk to anyone. You just assumed Mark. He hung up. But it didn't stop there. Mark doubled down. He claimed Dad wasn't mentally competent when he signed the deed over to me, started calling relatives, spinning it like I had manipulated an old man into giving up his biggest asset. The irony, I was the one who cared for him, who stayed, who listened. Mark hadn't so much as shoveled a sidewalk in 5 years. But, hey, if he wanted to play legal games, I had no problem finishing what he started, because I wasn't just going to shut him down. I was going to make sure he never tried something like this again. 2 days after that lovely phone call, Mark showed up at my place. No text, no warning, just standing on my porch like an angry raccoon in a button-down. I talked to a lawyer, he said through gritted teeth. They're looking into undoing the deed. You exploited Dad. That house should have gone to both of us. I didn't even flinch. Great, I said, stepping outside and handing him a sealed envelope. Then you'll be familiar with this. It was a copy of the original deed transfer, notarized and legally binding. I'd also included statements from Dad's doctor at the time, confirming he was of sound mind, along with proof that I'd been financially supporting the house for years. Oh, and a letter from my lawyer in case he still felt like pushing his luck. Mark snatched the envelope, rifled through it, and I swear I could see the gears in his head grinding to a stop. This doesn't change the fact that I'm family, he spat. We're supposed to share things. I looked him straight in the eye. You had a chance to share everything, Mark. You could have supported Dad, visited him, helped out. But instead, you blindsided him, locked him in a care facility, and tried to snatch a house you thought was still up for grabs. He went quiet. His jaw clenched, but he had no comeback. He didn't even know where Dad was currently staying. I had moved him to a much better facility, one that actually treated him like a person and not a pawn. I suggest, I added, you leave before you get served something stronger than a reality check. He didn't say another word, just stormed off, envelope in hand, ego in pieces, and I wish I could say that was the end of it. But Mark, he had one last stunt up his sleeve, and this time, it didn't just cross the line, it obliterated it. I should have known Mark wouldn't go down quietly. A week passed, no calls, no emails. I figured maybe he'd finally accepted defeat. Maybe, for once, he'd do the smart thing and walk away. I was wrong. One afternoon, I got a call from Dad's new care facility, the one I had moved him to after Mark's little power grab. Hi, we just wanted to let you know there was an incident today, the nurse said gently. Your brother came by. He was aggressive and tried to speak with your father privately, but when we reminded him that you're the legal contact and power of attorney, he got hostile. Hostile. According to staff, Mark demanded to see Dad's medical records, insisted they were hiding him, and even threatened legal action if they didn't release him immediately. It got so bad, they had to call security. He only left when they warned they'd involve the police. My hands were shaking when I hung up the phone. Not just from anger, but from the realization that Mark had gone from scheming to dangerous. He wasn't just bitter anymore. He was unhinged. Dad, thankfully, had no idea what happened. By the time I visited that evening, he was peacefully watching Jeopardy and thrilled to see me. I didn't tell him what Mark did. I didn't want to stress him out or reopen wounds, but I did take action. The next morning, I filed a restraining order on behalf of Dad. I provided the facility with all documentation, including the deed, the power of attorney, and statements from staff. They backed me 100%. Mark was now legally prohibited from visiting or contacting our father without my consent. And that was the moment I knew I'd won. Because while Mark was busy playing chess with a rulebook he barely understood, I'd been playing the long game, protecting our dad, honoring the home, and building a future that didn't include his petty, toxic drama. But as word spread through the family about what he'd done, the real punishment began. Mark was about to learn that you don't just lose houses in legal battles, you lose people. It didn't take long for the rest of the family to hear about what happened. Word travels fast in our family, especially when the story includes terms like restraining order, nursing home ambush, and tried to steal Dad's house. I hadn't planned on telling anyone beyond the care facility and my lawyer, but apparently Mark decided to get ahead of the narrative. He sent a long, melodramatic email to every aunt, uncle, cousin, and second cousin in the family. Subject line, why I was forced to stand up for Dad. I wish I was kidding. In it, he painted himself as a selfless son, heroically trying to intervene before I took everything from our father and isolated him in some overpriced facility for my own benefit. He even called me manipulative and greedy. I didn't even have to respond. Within hours, I started getting texts. Dozens. Mark is unbelievable. Wait, you own the house? He really thought no one would check the facts? Then came the phone calls. My Aunt Linda, Mark's godmother, was livid. He used your dad like a pawn, she said. He thought if he got control of the house, he'd get to play king. But you've been there for your father through everything. We all saw it. Turns out, most of the family had been silently watching over the years. They saw who visited, who called, who actually showed up. They just never said anything out loud, until now. And Mark, he was suddenly very, very quiet. No more emails, no more demands. His social media went dark. Apparently, getting publicly outed by a bunch of boomers in a group chat hits harder than he expected. But for me, it wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. About showing my dad, and everyone else, that doing the right thing quietly doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're grounded. And Mark, he'd burned the last bridge he had. About 2 weeks after Mark's meltdown and the fallout that followed, I got a call from our cousin Sarah, the unofficial diplomat of the family. She was calm, kind, and always the one who thought problems could be solved if we all just talked it out. I think it's time for a family sit-down, she said. You, Mark, a few of us who've been watching this unfold. No yelling, no drama, just clarity. I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but part of me wanted it, needed it even. Not for closure with Mark. I'd stopped expecting that a long time ago. But for everyone else, the people still unsure, still stuck in that family should stick together no matter what mindset. So I agreed. We met at Aunt Linda's house, a neutral zone with too many framed cat photos and the smell of banana bread lingering in the air. Sarah was there, so was Uncle Pete, and surprisingly, so was Mark. He looked tired, defeated, like someone who'd finally realized he wasn't the main character anymore. We sat down, and after a few polite hellos, it got quiet. Sarah started. We're not here to fight. We just want to hear what happened from both sides. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I explained the years I'd spent caring for Dad, the deed transfer, the power of attorney, the work, the time, the emotional labor, how Mark swooped in with zero context and tried to seize control, how he lied, manipulated, and disrespected not only me, but our father. I kept it measured, factual, calm. Then it was Mark's turn. He fidgeted, cleared his throat. I thought Dad was getting worse. I didn't know about the paperwork. And yeah, I made some assumptions, but I didn't mean for it to get this far. Aunt Linda cut in. You didn't mean to what? Lock him away? Take the house? Gaslight your own brother? Mark looked at the floor. I was angry, he said. I thought everything would go to you. I thought I'd be left with nothing. I finally spoke. You weren't left with nothing, Mark. You left. Years ago. You chose distance. I chose to stay. He didn't argue, and that was it. He apologized. Not grandly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, barely audible, I'm sorry. And for the first time, I believed it. Not because I trusted him again, but because he finally had to sit with the truth in front of witnesses. He stood up and left early, didn't say goodbye, but it didn't matter. The rest of the family stayed. We talked, laughed a little, shared stories about Dad. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was defending myself. I felt seen. After that meeting, things finally settled. No more surprise visits, no more legal threats, no more accidental family group texts from Mark pretending he was the victim. Just peace. Dad was thriving in his new care facility. I visited him every other day, and on the weekends we'd watch old westerns together or sit by the garden while he told me stories he swore he'd never told anyone else. He was safe, comfortable, still sharp enough to crack jokes about Mark trying to swoop in like a buzzard. I even showed him pictures of the house after I'd made a few updates. Nothing major, just things he'd always wanted to do but never got around to. A fresh coat of paint, new fixtures, a restored banister he used to run his fingers over when thinking. He smiled, real soft, and said, I'm glad it's still in the family, the right part of the family. As for me, I finally felt like I could breathe again. Owning the house wasn't about the property or the money, it was about what it represented, trust. The quiet legacy of showing up, of doing the work, of being steady even when no one's watching. Mark never understood that. Maybe he never will. But I didn't need him to. The rest of the family now knew the truth. And more importantly, so did I. I wasn't just the sibling who got lucky or won the house. I was the one who stayed when things got hard, who stood up when someone tried to bulldoze the past for their own gain, and who made sure that our dad's final years were spent with dignity, not as a pawn in some greedy power play. And now, every time I step into that house, our house, I feel it, the weight of legacy, the lightness of peace, and the power of knowing that when it mattered most, I did right by the person who raised me. This story isn't just about a house. It's about what happens when people confuse inheritance with entitlement, and what it really means to honor someone's life, not just their assets. My brother thought love could be measured in square footage, that showing up at the last minute gave him a right to rewrite history. But the truth? Family isn't about who swoops in when there's something to gain. It's about who shows up consistently, with no guarantee of a reward. If you've ever had someone try to erase your effort, your history, or your relationship with someone you loved, just know receipts matter, truth matters. And staying quiet to avoid conflict only gives selfish people more room to take up space they don't deserve. Have you ever dealt with family drama over inheritance, property, or caring for an aging parent? Share your story in the comments. I know I'm not the only one who's been there, and your experience might just help someone else going through the same thing. And if this story hit home, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep telling real stories that matter. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's not what you're given that defines your legacy. It's what you choose to protect. See you in the next one.